On a crisp autumn morning, JFK International Airport was alive with energy. The air buzzed with the rhythmic symphony of hurried footsteps, the rolling hum of suitcase wheels, and the muffled voices of travelers caught between destinations. People rushed past one another, clutching steaming cups of coffee in one hand and boarding passes in the other, their faces a mixture of anticipation and exhaustion. Overhead, the familiar voices of gate agents echoed through the terminal, their announcements blending seamlessly into the organized chaos. Amidst the sea of hurried passengers stood Jordan Ellis, a striking black man in his late 30s. Though he carried himself with quiet confidence, there was something about him that naturally drew attention. He wasn't the type to seek the spotlight, yet his presence was impossible to ignore. Dressed impeccably in a tailored navy blue suit that fit him like a second skin, he exuded an air of effortless sophistication. In one hand, he held a sleek leather briefcase. In the other, a polished tablet. Every inch of him reflected the seasoned professional he had become. But this was no ordinary flight for Jordan. This trip to Los Angeles carried weight far beyond the miles he was about to travel. As the CEO of Ellis Solutions, a rising cybersecurity firm, he was on the brink of something monumental. Years of relentless work, sleepless nights, and an unwavering belief in his vision had led him to this moment. The meeting ahead was more than just another business deal. It was the gateway to expansion, to global recognition, to everything he had sacrificed for. A multi-million-dollar investment was within reach, and he had spent weeks refining every detail of his presentation, determined to leave no room for doubt. Yet, as he stood there waiting for his boarding group to be called, mentally rehearsing every word, something pulled his attention away. A family stood just a few feet away from him, a man, a woman, and their 2 teenage children. At first glance, they were simply another well-dressed family in first class, the kind he had encountered countless times before. The father, a distinguished-looking man with graying hair and sharp features, wore an expensive tailored blazer. His wife, equally polished, was wrapped in an immaculate white cashmere coat. Their children, a boy and a girl, looked every bit as privileged, each engrossed in the glow of their latest model smartphones, their designer sneakers spotless beneath them. Jordan wouldn't have given them a second thought, but something about their demeanor struck him. The father's eyes darted around the terminal with a quiet but unmistakable air of distaste, as though merely existing in this shared space with other travelers was an inconvenience to him. His expression, taut with irritation, gave the impression that he believed he belonged somewhere far more exclusive. His wife leaned toward him and murmured something under her breath, to which he responded with nothing more than a curt nod. Their children, meanwhile, remained oblivious, absorbed in their own digital worlds, untouched by the movement and energy around them. Jordan sighed quietly, shaking off the unease the family's presence stirred in him. He had no time to be distracted, not when the stakes were this high. As the gate agent's voice rang through the terminal, calling for first-class passengers to board, he adjusted his grip on his belongings, straightened his posture, and stepped forward. He had no way of knowing that this flight would change his life forever, for reasons that had nothing to do with business. Jordan Ellis was in no rush. He had flown first class more times than he could count, and he knew there was no need to hurry. There would be plenty of space, and his seat would be waiting for him. As he approached the boarding gate with a calm and measured stride, his attention flickered toward the well-dressed family, making their way forward as well. Unlike him, they appeared impatient, their movements sharp with irritation. "Let's just get this over with," the father muttered under his breath as he handed his boarding pass to the gate agent, his voice laced with annoyance. Once aboard the aircraft, Jordan navigated toward his assigned seat, 1A, a spacious window seat in the front row of the first-class cabin. With the ease of someone accustomed to this setting, he slid his briefcase into the overhead compartment, then settled into his seat, exhaling softly as he pulled out his tablet. He had gone over his presentation countless times, but he wanted to refine every last detail before landing in Los Angeles. A few minutes later, the same affluent family stepped into the cabin, Their presence was hard to ignore, not only because of the pristine designer clothing they wore, but also due to the palpable air of entitlement that seemed to accompany them. As they made their way down the aisle, the father's expression noticeably darkened the moment he laid eyes on Jordan. His sharp gaze lingered, his lips pressing into a thin, displeased line before he turned to his wife. "Are you kidding me?" he hissed, his voice low but sharp. "We're sitting next to him." His wife glanced toward Jordan briefly before replying in an equally hushed tone, though her words carried a forced calm. "It's only a few hours. Let's not make a scene." Their whispered exchange did not escape Jordan's notice, though he chose not to react. He had encountered this kind of thing before, the veiled disdain, the unspoken assumptions. It was nothing new. And though he had learned long ago to rise above moments like these, the weight of it still lingered, an invisible force pressing against him. But the man across the aisle could not seem to let it go. As he settled into his seat, his discomfort hardened into something more deliberate. Within moments, he flagged down a flight attendant, a young woman named Claire, who approached with a warm yet professional smile. "Is there something I can assist you with, sir?" she asked courteously. The man lowered his voice, though his displeasure was unmistakable. "Yes, we were hoping to be seated elsewhere. We'd prefer not to sit here." Claire blinked, clearly caught off guard. "I'm sorry, sir, but the first-class cabin is fully booked. All passengers have been assigned their seats." The man's frown deepened, his irritation simmering just beneath the surface. "Are you sure?" he pressed. "There must be something you can do. We paid a great deal of money for these seats, and I'd expect a bit more accommodation." Claire remained composed, her voice steady yet firm. "I understand, sir, but at this time there are no other available seats. If anything changes, I will be sure to let you know." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving the man seething in his seat. Jordan kept his eyes on his tablet, pretending not to hear the conversation, though a quiet frustration simmered beneath his calm exterior. He had spent years proving himself, building his company from the ground up, earning his place in spaces like this. Yet there were still people who saw him not for his accomplishments, not for his intellect or his success, but for the color of his skin. As the plane took off, the tension in the air remained thick, unspoken, yet undeniable. The father across the aisle continued to steal occasional glances at Jordan, his expression tinged with resentment. His wife leaned toward him now and then, whispering what were likely reassurances or pleas to let it go, but the strain between them was already evident. Jordan, however, refused to let the moment consume him. He had worked too hard to be distracted by other people's ignorance. He remained focused, immersing himself in his work, knowing that how he handled situations like these mattered, not just for himself, but for those who looked up to men like him. An hour into the flight, the plane encountered a patch of turbulence. Claire, ever attentive to her passengers, moved through the cabin to ensure everyone was comfortable. When she reached Jordan's row, her gaze landed on his tablet screen, which displayed a series of intricate graphs and cybersecurity analytics. Her curiosity piqued, she smiled and asked, "Excuse me, sir, but are you in finance or tech?" Jordan looked up, offering her a polite smile. "Tech. Cybersecurity, to be exact." Claire's eyes lit up with interest. "That's fascinating. My brother works in IT, and he's always talking about how cybersecurity is the future." Jordan gave a small nod. "It definitely is," he said, his voice steady, his mind already shifting back to the work ahead. As Jordan continued reviewing his work, a soft but intrigued voice cut through the cabin's quiet hum. "We're working on some exciting projects right now," he told Claire, the flight attendant, in response to her earlier curiosity. Though it was a brief exchange, it did not go unnoticed. Across the aisle, the wealthy father, who had spent the entire flight casting glances of irritation, had been discreetly eavesdropping. He exchanged a look with his wife, who raised an eyebrow, her expression shifting from indifference to interest. It was clear they were now curious about the man they had so quickly dismissed. Unable to contain himself any longer, the father leaned forward slightly. "Did I hear correctly? You work in cybersecurity? Jordan turned to face him, his composure unwavering. That's right, he replied evenly. I'm the CEO of Ellis Solutions. We specialize in developing advanced cybersecurity systems for corporations and government agencies. The man's expression changed in an instant. A flicker of recognition crossed his face, his brows lifting ever so slightly. Ellis Solutions? He murmured, the name rolling off his tongue as if trying to place it. Then, realization dawned. Wait, you were featured in Forbes last month, weren't you? Jordan nodded, his tone measured. Yes, that's correct. We've been fortunate to gain some recognition recently. In that moment, the air between them shifted. The haughtiness that had once laced the man's demeanor was gone, replaced by something else entirely, respect or perhaps even embarrassment. The very person he had judged so harshly upon boarding the plane was, in fact, a highly successful businessman, a leader in his field. The man cleared his throat, clearly grappling with his earlier assumptions. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat before forcing a strained smile. Well, Mr. Ellis, I must say that's quite impressive. Cybersecurity is such a critical industry these days. You must be doing very well for yourself. Jordan remained composed, his expression unreadable. We've been fortunate, he replied simply. Hard work and persistence have paid off. His voice was neutral, neither boastful nor dismissive, just factual. Sensing her husband's discomfort, the wife quickly chimed in, her tone suddenly warmer, more inviting. We've actually been considering upgrading our company's cybersecurity infrastructure, she said. Maybe we could discuss potential solutions with your firm. Jordan offered a polite smile but said nothing further. He had no intention of engaging in business with people who had looked down on him mere moments ago. Their interest now, sparked solely by his success, did not impress him. At that moment, Claire returned with refreshments, momentarily interrupting the conversation. After handing Jordan his drink, she lingered for a brief second. If you don't mind me saying, Mr. Ellis, she said sincerely, I think what you're doing is incredible. It's inspiring to see someone work so hard and achieve this level of success. Jordan met her gaze, appreciating the warmth in her words. He gave her a genuine smile. Thank you, Claire. That really means a lot. From across the aisle, the wealthy couple observed the exchange in silence. Their arrogance had been replaced with quiet regret. It was clear that they had grossly misjudged the man sitting next to them, and now there was no taking back the assumptions they had made. Jordan noticed their discomfort but chose not to acknowledge it. Instead, he turned his attention back to his tablet, refocusing on the presentation that had brought him here in the first place. He had bigger things to think about than the misplaced prejudices of strangers. As the flight continued, the atmosphere in the first-class cabin gradually relaxed. The couple remained quiet, exchanging occasional glances, but refraining from any further conversation. The lesson they had learned weighed on them, though neither spoke it aloud. About an hour before landing, Claire returned to check on the passengers one last time. When she reached the wealthy man's row, she smiled politely. Is there anything else I can get for you, sir? The man hesitated, as if debating whether to speak. Then, after a brief pause, he finally said, No, thank you, but, He trailed off, shifting in his seat uncomfortably, before finally turning toward Jordan. His voice was quieter now, almost uncertain. Mr. Ellis, I just wanted to say, I apologize if we made you uncomfortable earlier. It was uncalled for. Jordan lifted his gaze, meeting the man's eyes with quiet strength. For a moment there was silence, the weight of the moment settling between them. Then finally he spoke. Apology accepted. His tone was calm, but there was depth to it. A quiet, steady power that made it clear the conversation was over. As the plane began its descent into Los Angeles, Jordan closed his tablet, taking a deep breath as he prepared for landing. The wealthy couple remained subdued, lost in their own thoughts, reflecting on the events of the flight. When the plane finally touched down and passengers began gathering their belongings, Jordan stood, retrieving his briefcase from the overhead bin. As he made his way toward the exit, Claire stood near the door, offering him a warm smile. Safe travels, Mr. Ellis, she said. and good luck with your meeting." Jordan smiled back. "Thank you, Claire." As he stepped off the plane and into the bustling terminal, he did not look back. He didn't need to. He knew exactly who he was, and no amount of judgment or prejudice could change that. The wealthy family remained in their seats for a few moments longer, watching him go. Their expressions carried a mix of regret, shame, and, perhaps at last, admiration. They had learned a lesson that day, one they would not soon forget. This story serves as a reminder that appearances can be deceiving and that the value of a person is never determined by what is seen on the surface. Jordan Ellis's quiet dignity in the face of prejudice is proof that respect is not something demanded. It is something earned, and it should be given freely to all. If this story moved you, please like and share it to spread a message of respect and equality. And don't forget to subscribe.